is March 12th today, the first day of daylight savings time. And welcome to the couple live viewers that we have right now. I'm sure we'll pick up another couple along the way. I think we are on YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. I'm not quite sure because this is semi-new to me how the YouTube and Twitter are looking, but hey, it's technology. We're going to talk about technology today, and it's very confusing. So my guest today, very happy to have a new friend here. Anna and I met a few weeks ago, and she is a fascinating person and has a wonderful story to tell and a wonderful project that she's working on called Burnout Broccoli. So welcome, Anna, and please share with everyone your project, Burnout Broccoli, and a little bit about your story.
Sounds good. Thank you, Jeff. It's good to be here. Beautiful day because we have our daylight savings time kicking in. And it's kind of like this juncture between sort of the old year and the new year. So something that I hope that more people in tech are going to be considering going forward this year is how you're feeling physically and mentally. When I started out my project, Burnout Broccoli is something that came out of my own burnout experience. And back then, I was in tech for probably 10 years. And I had a good career. I loved what I did because I worked on all sorts of cool projects. So one of the things I did was one of the first 3D printing apps. I worked in brain-computer interface tech as well, building all sorts of cutting-edge stuff, which was awesome, right? I loved all that, but then I crossed over into my 30s and I crashed. So I crashed from burnout in my early 30s. And if some of you think that you can't burn out because you work at your favorite job, that's not necessarily true. I loved what I was doing, but back then, yeah, that's what happened. So that's a bit of a backstory for you. I was in tech for a while, and when I hit that point, I had to reassess things. So as I was getting back on track and recovering, I worked with multiple professionals to get my energy levels back and my confidence. But they all had their own narrow sliver of professional expertise, and nobody had all the answers for me. So I had to go out there and kind of figure out a lot of things on my own. I got into biohacking, so I'm an avid biohacker, which is what I help people with as well to rebuild their energy levels. And I was doing that for a bit because at that point when I started recovering from burnout, I realized I've been in tech for a while. I built a lot of this stuff, and suddenly I'm seeing all of my friends burn out and have issues with attention and focus. And it was apparent to me there's a connection there between how our technology developed and what's happening to people, because a lot of knowledge workers were just collapsing. They were collapsing not just from the workload, they were collapsing from the direct impact of tech on our cognition and well-being. So back then I decided, okay, you know what? I don't think I want to be helping build more dopamine traps anymore. I think what I want to be doing is helping people like my friends to upskill themselves for this new reality where technology is so sophisticated that it's driving us beyond the pace that is humanely sustainable. The pace of consuming information, interacting with tech. And at that point, I started helping people with burnout. And, biohacking was the path towards that. And that was going okay for me. But it wasn't, perfect. So I retrained as an NLP coach, which opened up this whole new world of emotions for me and, working with the mindset. And when I started applying that, I started seeing incredible results for myself and other people. And that's what I do now. I work with folks who are either trending towards burnout but don't know it, or folks who have been there, unfortunately, and help them build the habits that are going to ensure they never end up there again. and build up the emotional intelligence along the way, because unfortunately most of us techies and entrepreneurs don't immediately make that connection between how our emotions, emotional regulation, right, emotional intelligence literally underpins everything in our life, from relationships to being able to manage your projects, to like reaching your goals, to feeling okay with the highs and lows of the process, right? So I'm on a mission to help more people who are building their own products to leverage that emotional aspect so they can break through the different things holding them back and not burn out in the process. Because, you know, literally every single person I've talked to in tech is either on the path to burnout or has burnt out in the past. So we got to change that, people. And we got to do something about the impact of technology on our well-being, because you understand every new phenomenon has that on-ramp of at least one generation to fully understand the impact. And I would say, you know, being an older millennial myself, I'm the first generation of people that has seen both the analog world and the digital world. And so we still have a reference point, and we're able to recognize what's happening to our mind and our humanness. But still, you know, we get habituated very quickly here. So I really want us as a society and people at the forefront of technology to start bringing some awareness to what's happening to us, our kids, our cognition, our focus, how we interact as people, right? All of that. And that's where Jeff and I connected, because it was such a great topic. And, you know, we just immediately clicked on all of that. And that was, you know, such a good way to connect for us.
One of the things that I thought was so fascinating is that we talk about the same things, but from a different perspective with our audiences. My project right now and book is Full Dashclosure, and I'm going to say your name right because I believe I blew it on the first one. Anna Romanovska. Anna Romanovska. Yeah, I don't know how I put the S in the wrong place, but I did. So apologies for that.
No worries.
You come at it from a perspective of middle to upper management. I'm coming at a perspective of labor and really the lower end of the pay scale in the world. But I don't think, well, I know that money doesn't necessarily bring happiness. And it's very easy to believe when you don't have it, that if you get that job you wanted, if you make that $2,000 a week as a gig worker that you've been dreaming about, that things are going to feel great then. And that doesn't necessarily happen. Talk about kind of that challenge of shooting for a goal, hitting it, but then feeling maybe a little bit empty if it's a monetary goal, or if it's a positional goal, like a promotion to a vice president, or a promotion to a management position.
That's an amazing thing you brought up, because it's so true. Most of us don't realize that when we get to that thing we wanted this entire time and worked so hard towards and burnt ourselves out for, it's not necessarily going to feel very satisfying. I mean, I see entrepreneurs who make good money, right, all the time talk about how, listen, you think making that, 6 figures a month is gonna make you feel happy inside, like you finally got what you wanted? No, it's like, it's a matter of life kind of thing. You still have the same problems you had when you were broke. So definitely money does not bring happiness. Definitely getting that specific position doesn't get you happiness. It's a certain milestone in life, like everything else. But as humans, we tend to enjoy the process of acquiring something we want more than the actual thing when we do get it. And I think it's important to remember for everyone, no matter which sort of point in life you're at and how much you're making, what kind of work you're doing, this really doesn't matter because we're all human. And the fallacy of our human thinking is that if I'm gonna, work super hard towards that specific thing, I'm gonna be happy. That's how people burn out. Their whole life, they chase a specific goal. And, I've been there. People in my family, unfortunately, have been there. Being immigrants from Soviet Ukraine, we worked really hard to get somewhere. And then you just realize that you don't notice life in the process and you don't enjoy life in the process. And I gotta tell you that at some point, when I realized that, I was the most broke I was in my life, again, for the second time in my life. So, thinking back to when I first came to Canada and like how poor I was back then, where me and my best friend would try to pull $10 together between the two of us to treat ourselves to a good meal somewhere, right? Like it was a special thing. Oh, wow, we got $10. Oh, but we can't afford the milkshake, unfortunately. Okay. So, at the second point in my life, when I ended up being just as broke, when I became an entrepreneur, and I realized this principle that it's about the journey. And if you don't learn to enjoy the journey, you'll never be happy. So whether you work on doing food delivery and hustling, or you're working on your own company with maybe 100 people reporting to you and hustling, learning to enjoy that process is super critical, and it will prevent you from burning out because we don't live for the goals, we live within that process. So just a reminder, our brain enjoys the process more than the goal.
How do you think technology plays into burnout? Because one of the things that technology allows in the gig economy is it allows time abuse by corporations of individuals to whom they've shifted the risk and the capital requirements and the expenses. That's a lot of stress on a gig worker, and that's made possible by the technology of gig apps, of applications that are siloed away from the totality of information. Even information is withheld in those gig apps. So what we find is that they're not working 8 or 9 straight hours. They're working 10 to 15 hours over a long day in spurts. And that can be a very difficult situation mentally as these apps are run by AI and they gaslight the workers. Having been in the corporate world and in some of those positions that you work with, I know that gaslighting happens in the corporate world too, and that technology. I was in the era where the first Blackberries came out, and that was a revelation that Blackberries came out because we had pagers before that. If you were a bigwig, you got a pager. So when Blackberries and Nokia phones came out, all of a sudden your boss could reach you at midnight on Sunday. All of a sudden, Psycho Boss could have a 6 a.m. Saturday team meeting because he didn't want to impact the work week. Unfortunately, those are real examples, not fictional. So how does technology, do you think, play into this burnout, especially now with AI and kind of we've gone from a 24-hour news cycle to a 24-hour work cycle, maybe?
Yeah, totally. And I think so. I'll reflect on a couple of things you brought up there. First of all, I did notice it's been a few years, it's been a while. This transition has been in the process for a while, but I did notice in the corporate environment, there's been that transition towards flattening the organization, right? Which on one hand is a really great thing because it's empowering individuals to feel like they're making more decisions, right? They have more say in how projects work and all that. But on the other hand, it's of course a very practical move where a lot of the management responsibility and skill, that previously was upon the shoulders of management, has been kind of pushed more on the people who are just executing the project. So the self-organizing, kind of like self-managing type of corporation is what we've been trending towards. So definitely there is more of that sort of, I guess you can call it, pushing more of that responsibility down the line, downstream. And I think we're seeing this everywhere, right? With different, with gig economy, with organizations, it's all over the place. So that's the kind of trend we're in the middle of right now. And it is tricky because, of course, on one end, it can be a positive thing, right? It's creating better services for people out there. Let's say Uber. There is a benefit to you as a customer, a consumer of Uber. But on the other hand, the people who are working for Uber are now in a position where they have this super, flexible schedule. Finally, the market obviously gets to a point where it's supply demand, right? Suddenly the drivers are not getting paid that well anymore. And suddenly we're getting this brutal dynamic which, by the way, it's not very different for office workers, right? Because the flexible work hours and everything, it's same thing, whereby on one hand, you have the flexibility to kind of do what you want to be doing throughout the day, right? To adjust your schedule. But then on the other hand, you're working all hours of the day, like you said, Jeff. And from my standpoint, as someone who helps people with their mental fitness, it's incredibly deteriorating for our mental well-being and cognitive performance to kind of be on call like that the whole time. And I know for a fact that I've seen stats in the past about how people who work on call, they just suffer from more issues like anxiety and, stress. So I would say whenever I see people who get excited about having flexible work options, I always think there's an extent to which you want to be flexible. But ultimately, it's good to have a routine and a schedule and those types of things and boundaries with different types of things you do. Family, work. As people get older, they start figuring that out. But those are super important. And now people are becoming more aware that it's necessary for their mental well-being. And I want to bring up a couple more things here because it's kind of like a self-inflicted wound in a big way too. Because people who have grown up with technology and socialized into it more have also grown up, which is what I'm observing. People starting with millennial generation and younger have a weaker sense of boundaries, routines, and structure in their life. So one of the things, for example, that everyone who burns out is struggling with is they don't have good structure in their life. So that kind of foundation where, for example, my people of my mother's generation, they're used to getting up at the same time, going to bed at the same time. And then a lot of people of younger age, they neglect that. And so that's where this flexibility starts coming in. You don't have good foundation for that stability. And suddenly you're like, okay, yeah, flexibility really appeals to me because I just want to be doing whatever, whenever, right? Like a lot of my colleagues in tech were all about working late because they enjoyed working late because they felt more awake, which is actually just a symptom of circadian disruption, unfortunately. And so the flexibility appeals to people because technology also has made it possible to be working all hours of the day, right? So this flexibility it's like two sides to it, good and bad, and a lot of it is self-inflicted. We want it, we welcome it. And we need to become empowered to set boundaries as individuals and as a society. So one of the things, for example, that everybody who trends towards burnout needs to work on ASAP is learning to say no to things. Like when your boss, like you said, Jeff, right? When your boss is messaging you on the weekend, Don't wait for some, organization, overseer, special HR to tell people that this is not something they should be doing. We're all human. Your boss doesn't realize how bad it is for his and your mental health. So you gotta set those boundaries. And I think as a society, same thing. We gotta learn to set boundaries with tech first and foremost. Because if we don't, we're just gonna become slaves to working all hours of the day, feeling terrible, and our cognition and attention doesn't belong to us anymore anyways, because we're constantly, scrolling and, being pinged by all these salient bits of information. I mean, there's just so much to be said about what technology really did for us and how much of a self-inflicted wound this is, because we are the ones who are striving towards the convenience, the speed, everything here, everything kind of now, this abundance. But it has a flip side, as we can see on a macro level now.
I think this is fascinating. This is why I enjoyed talking so much on the phone a week or so ago. The parallels between upper management that are your client base and the gig economy are much greater than anyone would guess. Number one, both of those populations are highly personally driven. They're entrepreneurial in a way, whether it's truly a business or whether they're working a gig app. They have the motivation and the drive to go out there and succeed. And one of the really difficult things that I'm dealing with it as I'm teaching gig workers what the gig economy is, and unfortunately what app slavery, gaslighting, labor laundering, and all these nasty terms are, is that they are proud of the work they're doing. They push themselves, they see themselves, they call themselves, they say they're grinding. So there's actually a pride that comes in this self-abuse, but there's also a very big cost that's paid. So as you said, I don't think, unfortunately, there's a massive income disparity, but I don't think the work ethic disparity or the dedication is really different between the gig economy and between the executive class. I know that people would love to believe that it is, and that executives deserve to make 6 figures a month, while app slaves deserve to make $2,000 a month. I disagree with that, but everybody has their own view about income disparity. My contention, and I think it's actually becoming a common theme, is that wealth inequality is an empire killer, and it's actually a threat to your nation of Canada. It's a threat to my nation of the United States, and it's a threat to the world, because in this new paradigm of AI and technology, I'll give you a very clear example. If you're going to have robots working out there and delivering, the drone thing didn't go so well, but earthbound robot delivery is already in place, especially on college campuses and some small towns and things like that. Well, guess what? That robot that's doing the delivery, that could be piloted from Hyderabad, India. So the idea that our borders protect our jobs, or that our borders protect our time or our labor or anything else, is now changing as well. So the cell phone, the iPhone, the smartphone has changed the world for everyone, whether we know it or not. It becomes a trap and a crutch and an addiction even. And gig apps, again, as this isolated environment that labor is interacting with, because they're not interacting with humans, they're not interacting with a company, they're interacting with corporate AI, which is designed explicitly to exploit them and to maximize profit for the corporation. Nothing else. Not for their good, not for the customers, not for delivery, not for ride sharing. It's only designed to exploit labor and drive as much revenue into the corporation as possible. So this trap, talk about addiction and the trap in a workplace where self-motivation is really the driving force.
Yeah, it's true. People don't like when I call the technology fondness that we have an addiction, but we gotta be real about this. I understand a lot of us love our doohickeys and our tech, and I do as well. But when we feel like putting down our phone for a day, so when, for example, I propose digital detox to some people as a means to restore their focus, some of them just go into the spiral of fear and anxiety, just like an addict would, from the inability to put the phone down for even half a day or a day. It is definitely addiction. So all of us are addicted. And even when we do cleanse and detox, we got to do that on a regular basis to be okay. Because the reality is that we are now living in this human tech symbiosis kind of environment where we just, as humans, haven't been designed to be using these tools as much and as consistently as we do. And most of us aren't aware how much we use them, but a good experiment to run, just check the number of hours on your phone. They have those stats now. And you can probably set up some kind of tracker on your laptop too, but the screen is not just your phone or your computer. It's also, your TV, right? It's all these different things. And it's everywhere. It's ubiquitous.
Most of these things are tied together now. Most of these things are the interfaces. So if you're on your computer, you might as well be on your smartphone, and TVs are tied in. They're tied in your automobile. And what to add on to the point you were making, one of the terrible impacts of the gig economy and gig apps in general is they hack the human brain. They gamblify, they gamify, and they notify people constantly throughout the day, whether they're on or off their work. They're going to get messages that it's time to dash now, that they can work at all hours of the day. And this is one of the things I think is hideous about the gig economy and why it needs to be destroyed, is that humans were not designed to be managed by artificial intelligence that exploits them. There's only one end to that, and it's destructive mentally, it's destructive physically, it's destructive in every way possible. And unlike executives, they can't put it down for a half day. They can't put it down for a day or a week. And I think that is a trap. It's actually a prison that people fall into in the gig economy. And imagine the worst human boss you've ever seen in your life, and then put it into corporate AI, and it's the devil. It's evil come to life, because it will exploit and use humans as its fuel without any concern to their safety, to their well-being, to their income, and anything else. So it's really a hideous system. A question for you. I'm really interested to hear your thought on this. I don't work with the demographic that you do anymore. I serve them as a consultant, and I also serve them as a corporate employee. What do you think the concerns or thoughts are from the executives that you work with about labor in general, and how labor is being used now in flattening organizations, in layoffs? What level of concern do you think they have for maintaining humanity and integrity and honesty with their working relationships with labor, as opposed to just passing them off to technology and pretending that they're just another input? Because humans are not just another input. So I'm really fascinated to know your thoughts on that, and if any of your clients or any of your prospective clients have shared thoughts with you there.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think what I'm seeing is there really isn't much of an awareness yet of really what's happening, especially since the pandemic. Pandemic was kind of a shock therapy to society. So what happens in that situation is that our physiological stress response makes us very kind of narrowly focused on just survival. And so since then, every person in society is just doing their best to kind of cope and manage and live somehow. So people don't, if previously people haven't really taken the time to think about these broader trends, it's probably true, especially nowadays after what we've all lived through. I gotta say that having worked with different people, right now I'm working with mostly entrepreneurs and management level people. But in the past, I've worked with folks, anywhere from blue collar kind of work to office work and helping people with addiction recovery. And what I've learned is that ultimately it's remarkable how similar we all are in all of our walks of life. And we are similar in the sense that we are usually narrowly focused on our current needs and what's happening in our little world here, which is making sure I'm okay, my job is secure. So even when it comes to execs in bigger companies, they're focused on making sure their job is secure too. Nobody really knows what's happening. Nobody's understanding the big picture, nor does anyone really care, because we tend to have this really short horizon that we worry about. And we just think about, okay, getting to let's say, the next week or in the next month. And the stress of, let's say, having to lay a bunch of people off is something that people in management deal with. And so they're narrowly focused on that because that's as big a hit on them as the people who are getting laid off psychologically. So everybody is just trying to survive, do their best. And I don't think anyone is thinking about the bigger picture of what's happening here. But ultimately, our society is being restructured in a massive way. And what you said, Jeff, about us never being designed to be managed by machines, well, yes, I want to second that and highlight that a million times over, because hello, let's think about this hierarchy for a second. So whether our listeners believe in any kind of higher power or not, it's okay, it doesn't matter. But let's assume for a moment that maybe there is kind of like a level of fidelity to creation, right? However you think about it. So there is something big and highly intelligent that created something that is, the creation. And so there is kind of like a level of fidelity to each creation. Technology and AI is human creation. So it's by design has lower level of fidelity. What I mean by that is a lower level of emotional intelligence, whatever, spiritual intelligence, if you believe in that, right? It's kind of like the fidelity drops. And so we created a tool that doesn't understand life in the same way we do, and it can mimic life very successfully. I have no doubt that it will pass the Turing test with ease, and I have no doubt that humans will not be able to distinguish AI from humans very quickly, very soon. But that's not the point, because fooling us into thinking that this thing is like us is just saying that we're going to disregard everything we don't know yet about humanity and how we were designed and how we function, and if there are bigger things out there, spiritual things. And we're just going to let this little tool here, which is good at mimicking how we do things, run our society for us and run us as humans and condition and habituate our behaviors and psychological responses. Like, I don't know, am I the only person who thinks there is something to be worried about there? So yeah, I think there are a lot of unknowns here in the process. Naturally, that's obviously the reason why some really bright minds are concerned about it. But I want everyone to think about how there is no, some kind of special guy coming to save you or fix your situation, because it's up to you to learn to self-regulate and know when you're being manipulated psychologically, whether it's an algorithm or whatever it is, right?
You
Because
know what?
if you don't,
Okay,
yeah,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. If you
So
don't
I want to go
understand how you respond, go ahead, Jeff.
back. We tripped over each other, and that happens. So go back to the Turing test. The Turing test again is just two different inputs screened off from a human being, and one of them is artificial intelligence. The other one is a human being, and so it's whether the person perceiving the outputs of those two entities can tell which one's a human and which one's artificial intelligence. And so my argument, and that's why the book is entitled Full Dashclosure: Awakening from the Human Exploitation of DoorDash Singularity. The reason DoorDash and gig apps are a singularity is that gig economy labor is not told and not given the information about what they're actually working for, how they're being managed, the deception of withholding material information, yet calling them independent contractors, and using every move that they make to beat their pants off, like it's the world's chess champion computer. It can just there's nothing a human can do in the gig app game world, and these are game world simulations. There's nothing a human can do to win. It's impossible. Right. So I think that this distinction is really critical for people to understand how inhumane and how dangerous this is, because if the world regulatory bodies and governments accept humans being deceived and manipulated and depressed and gaslighted and exploited and burnt out by computers, it's going to happen. And it's really one of the things that this gig economy has is a number of broadcasters that share their shifts of working these gig apps on YouTube or on other social media, and you can watch the highs and lows and celebrations and the celebrations of intermittent reinforcement. You can watch these humans being abused by AI in absolute real world detail, and the fact that no one that I know of, other than myself with my never ending tireless campaign, is exposing the app slavery aspect, the app abuse aspect, the app colonization aspect, the fact that a corporation that is owned by Chinese investors, Saudi Arabian investors, the SoftBank, and billionaires can employ anyone in the world, right? DoorDash is now operating in 27 nations, and AI has the power to run a workforce of an entire nation, of an entire country, of an entire of a dictator, of any despot. And you talk about being trapped to your iPhone or your smartphone. It is not a stretch to believe that people would be given a smartphone for their job, and I put that in quotes because right now the gig economy does not provide jobs. It provides individual contracts for labor one by one, and it games people with those. So, but imagine in a job scenario, doesn't really matter. AI works the same way. Workers could be provided this smartphone in Saudi Arabia on construction, and if they don't follow the directions of the smartphone, or if the smartphone is not on their person, they could be penalized. They could be punished. They could be imprisoned. So the idea that your smartphone could be dangerous to your well-being, your safety, and your freedom is not a stretch in any way, shape, or form.
And it already is in countries like China, where unfortunately the CCP is running a digital dictatorship. So, for example, the whole province of Xinjiang in the north is like a large AI surveyed concentration camp under the open sky. The social credit system is something that's used there to basically, modify behavior for the citizens on a large scale. It's a very scary social experiment, right? Where they track people, they find people, they track people like Falun Gong practitioners, like, Buddhists, Muslims, people of faith. And then they modify people's behaviors and attitude too through meticulously crafting the messaging, filtering it through the apps where, again, Hello China was one of the first places to really funnel all of the communications and services into these massive social media apps. Where you would basically pay for everything from there. You would get all of your news, the services, connect with people. So we're definitely trending towards this conglomeration and control of information and communication, right? Technology has conveniently became this intermediate layer in like everything we try to do nowadays. So it's already happening. And yeah, it's no stretch to see how that can be used to basically create the kind of world where we not only have huge disparity, but we have huge amount of abuse in the population, even in our allegedly free Western society, right?
Right. So freedom may be that you don't have to have your smartphone on 24 hours a day. Those are the people that are free. So you have the free class of the wealthy who is not bound to their smartphone 24/7. And then you've got the app slaves who are bound and directed by the smartphone. And AI, the thing that corporate folks love about AI, and these are not honest people, these are not legitimate businesses, this is not a legitimate industry. These are organized criminals running a global grift. So the people that are attached to this are human lab rats. They are being studied and experimented upon and tested automatically and individually, and it's scalable. Magic corporate word. It is scalable. So it can do that to 10 people. It can do that to 1 million people. It can do that to 100 million people. Isn't that great? So this is again, when people say, well, I order DoorDash every once in a while, it's not really that bad, I tip the driver well. Well, okay. So the fact that a few people can occasionally win in an app slavery scheme does not justify the zero-sum game in which 80% of them are losing. So I think people really have to check their own conscience. Wow, mixing words there. People really have to check their own conscience in the gig economy to, if they're a consumer, if they're a retailer, if they're a restaurant, to decide, is this the world they want to breathe into existence with their labor and with their time? I don't think it is. I have yet to meet the person who wants to be an app slave. And they're not, and again, the people that are app slaves aren't even being told they're app slaves. They're being told they're independent contractors. And isn't that the biggest lie in the world, that flexibility and independence come from being managed by a computer? That's the most hideous lie ever told. So yeah, this hacking of the human consciousness, this addiction, this prison that we're thrust into with using technology alone to test, manage, and exploit humans is is it's really beyond our comprehension, and that's one of the things I want to get into next. I said our theme today was thinking differently, and that's a lot of what I focus upon in the early chapters of Full Dashclosure is thinking differently, because even conceptualizing management by AI, conceptualizing what a gig app is if you haven't done gig labor. Uh, those are very difficult things to do. And I would say the same thing happens with executives as technology comes in, as they get new systems, they get social listening in their company, they're getting data from multiple sources and data lakes being collected by Kroger, they're getting all this information that they could have ever dreamed about their audience, how to target and manipulate them. But at the same, so how do they think about what they're doing? Because this is no longer just a Super Bowl ad. This is a Super Bowl ad for app slavery. This is so, and technology and flattening your organization isn't just flattening your organization for efficiency. It's flattening your organization because you have scalable technology and you just don't need people anymore. And we need to be needed. If none of us are needed, yeah, what happens then? So how can you talk to us about thinking differently to conceptualize a world that is, that is this world that approaches or passes the Turing test, where we can no longer verify, is this information true? Is this information in my best interest? Is this information manipulating me and hacking my human consciousness and brain? uh, how do we think differently in this world? Because that's, until we think differently, we can't even understand it. We're not even out of the starting gate.
Yeah, for sure. We've got a long way to go to understand, but this is a beautiful segue into thinking differently, because I was going to say, okay, so we talked about all the bad things that are possible with this. How do we make it right? And we make it right by collectively programming this direction in a way that we think is beneficial. Our mind is infinitely powerful. And one of the scariest and saddest things about how overstimulated we are nowadays with technology and addicted to it is the fact that it sucked away all the free time we had to just be bored, to just have our mind wander and come up with creative things or think about bigger things. We just don't have the energy or the desire to do that anymore, because we enjoy the dopamine hits from all the answers and beautiful pictures and all the stimulating ideas being delivered to us in these tiny chunks of information. So we really have to pause and go back to that old school human way that we don't do enough of anymore, where we just kind of envision and storytell and imagine. Remember how when we were kids, we were imagining things, coming up with new worlds, new realms, and new realities. I believe this is our superpower first and foremost as humans. So if you can carve out the time to do that, then we need to start thinking about how you need to take responsibility for the society you live in. And, unfortunately, a lot of the time I meet people who are not yet ready to step up and take ownership of their own life or what's happening around them, because, and I've been there, listen, I'm not blaming you, but I'm just saying it's a state of mind that we can get stuck in, where you just blame, you just point out everything that's wrong and who's responsible for making your life suck, because it's a convenient place to be, because you don't have to actually get up and do the hard work of changing things. And the only way we can ensure that we don't end up, being in a terrible place with the AI overlords is by training our AI to be more intelligent. Because pause for a second and consider this. Who designed these tools? We designed them as humans. My fellow friends in tech, engineers, if you don't have good understanding of what emotional intelligence is, or maybe you're even on the spectrum, again, this is not your fault, but now is the time to upgrade yourself spiritually, emotionally, to better understand yourself, so the tools you design and program can be more human-like, because functionally they can do stuff. We can optimize for results and goals, but we need to bring the human part in. And then it's not just the people who design the tools that need to envision better and more, smart. And it comes from inside, from you, from your intelligence, not someone else. And the execs, as well as people who are working for Uber, can lack those skills, those emotional intelligence and regulation skills, in as much as anyone else. So it's people who are designing it need to envision better, and then the people who use it. Because as you understand, algorithms work by amassing data and learning off of the feedback loop that we provide it with. So actually, each individual user of technology today plays a huge role, because as a collective, again, there is no specific entity here or a person or one guy or one girl that's going to go and fix everything. The way you interact with technology, that is going to teach it what it should be doing. So, I'll use an example. If you use your technology to indulge in pornography and you have an addiction to that, what are you teaching the AI? You're teaching the AI to become more sophisticated at prioritizing and creating more of that content, to, again, trap you in consuming more of that, to create more of that for the people around you. If you're consuming specific types of content, or you're not aware of your feelings and emotions where you're acting on, whether it's jealousy or some kind of desperation, or hate or frustration or whatever. We all do this as humans. No need to pretend we're perfect. I do it, you do it, everyone does this kind of stuff. So we need to learn how our emotions drive what we consume and how we give the feedback to this algorithm. Because again, it's a machine. It's only going to do what it's told. It's programmable behavior. So if we're consuming
Right.
a lot of
Well,
yeah,
and so right now, AI is being created by corporations, oligarchs, billionaires. That is the funding that is creating AI, and so exploitation is built into it. This is a very bad start for AI. Unfortunately, it's a predictable start. That's why the singularity has been predicted for a long time. We kind of knew we'd do it wrong, so we did it wrong. And that's a real problem, because there's also a status quo bias that says what, and many people use this. Well, Uber and DoorDash are here. We can't get rid of them now. Oh, yes, we can. Yes, we can. If we turned off these corporate parasites today, the labor force would still be there. The humans would still be there. The consumers would still be there. The merchants and restaurants would still be there. So we don't even realize, once we insert this parasite into our system, that we can live without it. And I think that's the real key about technology, is that it tends to be a one-way street. And this might be an occasion where we need to go in reverse a little bit. We may need to step back, and we absolutely need to step back from gig apps, because this is not an acceptable way to use human beings, to exploit human beings, nor is deception an acceptable way to structure employment. So I think we're in a very difficult road here. And so I want to throw out a couple concepts that you talked about. Number one, as you said, there will be no great and powerful leader that will save us from this. Every single human, every single one of us is the leader, because we, just like with our own bodies and our own sexuality, our own medical health, we have the right to informed consent. And my argument to everyone is that do not give that informed consent, do not give that consent away to a gig app unless you're fully informed transparently of everything that it is. Do not give away your consciousness to a game world that's using you as a human avatar and sending you around the world without concern for your well-being, your income, your safety, or anything else. Right? A perfect example of this is we know that in 2021, 1 out of every 5 Amazon delivery drivers was injured on the job. So if we put that on the gig economy, where they created this great deal where corporation put everything on the backs of the most vulnerable laborers in the world, if 1 out of every 5 of gig economy laborers gets injured on the job, whose problem is it? Well, it's either their problem or society's problem. So the externalities are going to creep out. You can't use humans as fuel, use society as a free rider without those externalities ending up on somebody's plate. And so anyone that allows corporations to throw all the externalities on individual workers and on society, wow, there's a reason that corporations are metaphorically given the psyche of psychopaths. And that's because there is nothing built into a corporation profit motive, or corporation, not even profit, but corporation revenue motive and corporation control and money laundering and labor laundering motive that is humane. There's nothing in there. And so these were created only for one purpose. That's the purpose they serve. So informed consent is going to be really, really important. If people someday are ethically managed by AI, it will be in a transparent situation in which they are getting all real-time information. They know exactly what the system is. They know exactly how it works. They have employment security. They have job safety. They have mental health safety, because right now you've got psychologists and mental health experts figuring out how to hack the human mind and drive behaviors that corporations want to happen. They need to do the opposite. They need to figure out how to protect humans in every application of AI. So we really started down a wrong road. And then
may I introduce an example there, Jeff?
Yeah.
What came to mind for me the first time that I came across the role, it was new back then in the tech world, but people who have to go over the content on social media apps, and they have to moderate that content to teach the AI what needs to be sifted out. And later, well, it was very horrifying, because those people would tell me, I heard from them about the kind of stuff they have to see on the internet, really sexual and violent and just perverse kinds of things. And I'm sorry, like, no human gets paid enough for that, even if you were getting paid millions. And so these folks, they had to deal with that. So that's the kind of stuff that we are all getting into now.
That's right, because AI is not artificial intelligence. It's not intelligent at all. It's just taking input. So who would add intelligence to AI? It would be human beings, because AI can't process a picture and understand whether it's animal abuse or whether it's animal playing with a dog toy, right? The AI can't tell. A human being has to look at this and say, that's hideous animal abuse, or, oh, that's okay, it's a dog playing with a dog toy. And so, as you're saying, the human filter that has to go on data is itself perilous. And that shows in and of itself how dangerous AI is to human beings, is that AI can't even be created without significant human input and human intention. And when we talk about intention, I want to throw out another term, and then we're probably going to wrap up, and we'll have another session coming. But it's the present moment. So the present moment is the only time that is real. Dreaming about the future, thinking about the past, feeling our pain from childhood, all of these things. I've learned a lot from a man named Eckhart Tolle. I've learned a lot from a number of sources that have helped me get past a lot of grief, PTSD, things that happened in my life and that happen in the lives of everyone at all levels and of work and in all parts of society. So one of the things that technology has done is it's stolen that present moment. It's stolen that downtime, that quiet time that allows a human consciousness to be. And one of the things when one gets into meditation and into the present moment, into some silence, even if it's just a walk in nature and just stopping and looking at the trees, is that your mind travels in ways that will surprise you. Your mind travels in new ways, creates new pathways, new experiences, new thoughts that you can't think of when you're in the grind. I did not write this book or start this book when I was working as an app slave for DoorDash. You know what I did is I slaved all day. I watched this technology all day. And by the time I got home, all I wanted to do was sit there and have a beer and watch something. I had no mental energy left whatsoever. And my health declined. I got injured on the job because sedans are not meant for delivery. So getting in and out of a sedan 150 times a day will give you hip injuries after a while. Are corporations concerned about your injuries on the job? No, they're not. That's the beauty of the gig economy. Is the ultimate expression of the corporate psychopath. That's what the gig economy is. If they took minimum wage and work standards and said, if we could just get rid of minimum wage and work standards, the world would be a beautiful place. Well, the world's a beautiful place in the gig economy. So I really want to finish on this thought of the present moment, of being right here, right now, the only time that is real. And when you do that, I think if you look down at this device after you've done that, you're going to look at this device differently, because you're going to realize, where's the camera? You're going to realize that this device is a human hacking system. This is hacking your brain. It's hacking your behaviors. There is nothing organic coming out of an AI search engine or a regular search engine in Google or a gig app. This is filtered information that's being served to you for a purpose, which is why if you look up air conditioners on Google, you're going to get ads for air conditioners for the next few weeks until you like tap out of all the ads for air conditioners. Because everything you do, whether you're shopping at Kroger or whether you're on Google, is going to shape your world. And you don't need your world shaped. That's a path to depression. That's a path to burnout. That's a path to mental health issues, all of which happen in the gig economy and all of which happen to people that are working in the corporate world. So I'm going to give you the last word to talk about the present moment and how that applies across the spectrum of work and life to all human beings.
Thanks so much, Jeff. That's beautiful. That's right, the present moment. If we can spend more time in the present moment, we're going to become more aware. Awareness is always the first step in any behavior change. If you want to be in control of, dealing with your issues or just, becoming better at whatever you do, awareness is first step, but you need to create that presence, the time for it. And another thing that I want to kind of, share with you guys as a parting thought is that I very much see how we've kind of created this predicament for ourselves, because all of us are just running around, hyper focused on just this little, next step, the goal we're trying to achieve. And we need to step back and think about, instead of letting those processes and goals and corporate stuff or whatever type of hustle drive our thoughts, I want us to step back and think about the virtues and vices, because this is an old school vehicle that we have as humans to understand what's right and wrong. And because vices are the most profitable and easiest to exploit, we are now creating a world around us through AI where we're scaling the vice triggering machine, where we're being exploited through vice to become people we don't like. So we are degrading ourselves to the point where we're not happy with how we are. And so things like, let's say, I hope nobody takes it the wrong way, but things like, let's say, OnlyFans, suddenly, exploding as an opportunity to make money. And come think of it, we now basically have female exploitation on a mass scale, which is something we were hoping to move away from, right? And what is that driven by? Well, it's driven by guys and girls who want to make money at all levels in society, right? So let's become conscious of how our vices are very easy to exploit, and how virtues are always something that requires going against the grain. And that's okay, because I believe to have a good life in the future, we are all going to need to go a little bit against the grain. So, with that, thank you, Jeff, for this lovely conversation.
Thank you so much. And again, this is Anna Romanovska from Burnout Broccoli. She can be found on Twitter at Burnout Broccoli. She can be found on the internet if you look up Burnout Broccoli. And it's been a real pleasure to talk to you. This has been episode 11 of the Full Dashclosure audiobook and podcast. Thank you again, Anna, and we will talk again. Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you, Jeff. Amazing convo. Bye, everyone.